Hello everyone and welcome to the Mylio Photos coffee break. My name is Angela Andrew and today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite things, photo editing. We're going to be going over the relationship between Mylio Photos and external editors, and we're going to specifically be talking about Luminar Neo, which is a very, very cool tool, very versatile, has a lot of things that can really accentuate and give you a lot of options that go beyond the editing tools that are in Mylio Photos. Before we jump into that, I do want to just cover some of our upcoming events. So everything we have up here has been finished up for the week. And I wanted to remind you that we are off next week. So no live events. Go spend time with your family. Enjoy those memories. If you're in the US, happy Thanksgiving. So we will not be having any live events next week, but we will be picking things up starting December 2nd, I think it is the Monday after. And we're going to have a ton of cool stuff for you. So we're going to have those weekly sessions that Lori does in the morning. We'll have Ready, Set, Go. We'll have live Q&A on Tuesday, Thursday. We've got some great topics for you in Coffee Break. We also have a new series that I'm doing called Picture Perfect Presents. That's going to run for the first 2 weeks of December. We're going to show you some really cool integrations between Mylio Photos and Printique and different gifts that you can make using your photos for some really special heirloom treasures that you can give to friends and family or make for yourself. Before we go any further, I also want to let you know that if you're loving Mylio Photos, you can give that as a gift to a friend or family member. One of the bonuses you get if you give Mylio as a gift is you also get, I think, a couple of months added to your account as part of that bonus. So check that out. That's at mylio.com/holidaygifts. So let's go ahead and jump into today's presentation. I'm going to go ahead and switch over here to Keynote. And let me take a look here at our attendee list. I want to welcome everybody. So glad you're able to be here. Today we're going to be talking about round trip editing with Mylio Photos and Luminar Neo. Now I do see that Edward is here today. So this topic was recommended and requested by him because he does a lot of his editing with Luminar Neo. And Edward, I know you've been working with our support team on those HEIC files going from Mylio to Luminar Neo. Neo released an update very recently. I just ran this update last night and I tested an iPhone 16 HEIC file with it this morning. Everything's working. You should have heard from JC this morning. If you haven't, that email will be coming soon. But I just wanted to let you know that issue should be resolved at least on the Luminar Neo side. So let's go ahead and dive in to Luminar Neo and Mylio Photos. Today we're going to cover what is Luminar Neo. So if you've never heard of this program, you're going to get an overview of what it's capable of, why it's really helpful to me in my workflow to have both Mylio and Luminar Neo. I'll show you how to work with any external editor, not just Neo, but any external editor you want to work with. We'll go over the workflow for using the photo open with option in Mylio, and then some ways that you can save those edits that you make in other programs back to Mylio Photos. So let's go ahead and jump into what is Luminar Neo. So basically, it is an AI-powered photo editor, and it's got some amazing advanced editing tools. It can do things like sky replacements, portrait retouching. It's got an erase tool. It can automatically remove power lines and dust spots. It does pano merging, HDR merging, focus stacking merging. It's got a couple of tools in there built in. They're AI-based for reducing noise and sharpening images. So if they're a little bit soft, it can kind of make those details stand out. If you've got things that are really small, it has upscaling, so you need to make them bigger. This is great for those of you working on family history projects where you might have something that's really tiny. You want to make it bigger just to give it better quality. Maybe you want to print it. It has a great tool for that, plus a ton of different artistic effects. And the reason I like using this tool with Mylio Photos is it really expands what I'm able to do. So what you can do with Mylio, of course, we all know this, it's a great tool for organizing your photos. And you can access your stuff across all of your devices. Now, there are editing tools in Mylio, but they're very basic. And for some things and doing those quick edits, those tools can be really good. And maybe it's all you need. But a lot of us take a lot of photos and maybe we want to get a little bit creative. Maybe there's some problems we want to solve. Having a tool like Luminar Neo or Photoshop Elements or something else that expands those options for you can really make a big difference. So if that's something that you're interested in, Luminar Neo might be a really great choice for you. And I do see a question here that popped in from Lynn. Does Luminar work with Android? I'm not sure if there's an Android version available. I know that there's an iPhone version, an iOS. I know there's an iPad version. I think you have to have an iPad Pro to run it. I'm not sure if there's an Android version at this time. I think there might be, but it's going to work a little bit differently than their desktop version. Their desktop version has a ton more options than the mobile versions do. The mobile versions are a lot of fun. They make some great edits, but you're going to have a lot more flexibility in editing regardless of what software package you choose to use when you're on a desktop computer. So let me know if you have any questions as we're going through, and we'll go ahead and continue on here. So the way that you get into any external editor, including Luminar Neo, is via the OS menu bar, and you click on the photo menu. So up here, you can see a little screenshot here, photo, open with, and then that's going to give you a selection of applications you have installed on your computer that are compatible with the file type that you're trying to open. If you don't see the application you want to use on Mac, there's this other, and that lets you go into your file system and choose a different application. If you're on Windows and you're not seeing what you're looking for, there's a few extra steps that you have to go through. Those are listed in the manual. Hopefully, Lori can grab that article and get that posted into the chat so you guys can look for it. So let's go ahead, and we're going to go ahead and open up some images in Luminar Neo. A couple of things else to mention is you can open images one at a time, or you can open a whole group of them. So if you have a bunch of images you want to work on, feel free to open them all up at once. You can kind of batch process things. And you can also work with your original unedited images or raw images, or if you've made some of those changes in Mylio, you want to keep that and edit those in another program, you can do that too. So I'm going to walk you through those steps. Let's jump over to Mylio, and I'm going to go into some pictures I took in the Eastern Sierras. Let's go ahead and jump into this particular folder, and let's grab this image here. This one's really pretty. Let's edit this. If I want to just take this image, I can simply go up here to photo, choose open with, go down to Luminar Neo right here, and that's going to go ahead and launch it. If I have a bunch of images that I want to edit, I can simply grab a whole range of images. I can make a selection, and again, go photo, open with, and Luminar Neo. In this instance, I just want to do this one. So we're going to go here to photo, open with, and Luminar Neo. Now you're going to get a dialog that asks you, what file do you want to send? For me, what I'd like to do is I want to send my raw, unedited file to Luminar Neo, give it the most information to work with, and let it have a chance to do those raw adjustments. If I had edited this picture in Mylio and I wanted to take those edits and take them further, you would choose the edit a copy with Mylio Photos adjustments. So we're going to stick with the raw and click continue, and that's going to go ahead and launch Luminar Neo. Now, if you're already a Luminar Neo user, I did mention earlier in this presentation, they just put out an update, so make sure you go and run those updates. If you go up here to the Luminar Neo menu, check for updates, that is right there. So we've got our picture here, and when you open a single image, it's going to pop you into the presets. They've got a ton of presets that can help you style your images in many different ways. I don't use a lot of presets myself, but they can be a really great starting point if you need some inspiration on how to edit something. Presets can be super helpful. But for right now, what I want to do is I'm going to jump straight over into edit, and we're going to go ahead and make some changes here. So let me take a question here, see if we've got any questions here that have popped up. All right, and Jim confirms there's no Android version yet, so unfortunately, no. Lynn says open with is grayed out. That's interesting. Let's see here. Make sure you have to have an image selected. Perfect. All right. And Lou, I'm glad the highlighter on the cursor is helpful. All right, so let's go ahead and do some editing and have some fun with this image. So the first thing, because this is a raw photo, I'm going to go here into the develop raw. And you'll see we have actually a lot of the similar sliders that we do in Mylio. And this image is a bit bright. I'm going to pull those highlights down. And look how that's bringing out the color in the sky. I think that's a lot of fun. I might actually bring the overall exposure down just a touch. And that's already looking a lot better. Now I can go ahead and make a few other adjustments, like we can adjust the white balance here. Let's go ahead and set this at a daylight white balance. Or you can even try cloudy if you want it to be a little warmer. I think that's a little too warm, so I'm gonna go back to daylight. I think that's a good balance between the warmth of the shrubbery and then the cool tones we have in the sky. You can adjust the sharpness. I do like to add a little bit of sharpening here to my raw images. Typically when you have a raw photo, when it's coming out of, it can be your camera, it can be your phone, any of these images that are raw, so it's a DNG, this means that that particular camera applied no processing. If you have something set to JPEG or HEIC, you're actually counting on that camera to do some level of processing for you. And that often includes some sharpening. So if you're shooting in RAW and your pictures look a little bit soft, consider adding a little bit of sharpness. Don't go too overboard. It's going to cause weird artifacts if you do, but they typically need at least a little bit. If I had shot this at a high ISO, I could add some noise reduction. This one was shot at ISO 100, so I don't need to do that. And then I always like to go down here into optics, and I'm going to correct any distortion. You'll notice that that just removed the barrel distortion from my lens, which is great. If you have areas that have really high contrast with going from, dark areas immediately to bright, you might sometimes notice that you have those magenta and green halos. Using fixed chromatic aberrations is going to get rid of that. And I also like to auto defringe. It just kind of cleans up the image, gives you a really good quality. If there's additional distortion, you can correct it. And if you were taking a picture of a building or something like that, and maybe it's just leaning, or maybe you didn't get it lined up just right, Transform lets you fix some of that additional distortion. In a landscape photo like this, we don't really need it. So I'm going to go ahead from here and I'm going to close up that develop. Now, a really fun tool in here, I mentioned this is an AI photo editor. Some of the tools in here are AI based, some of them are not. And the great thing about AI is you can choose how much or how little of it you want to use. Enhance AI is an awesome tool that just makes pictures better. You'll notice as I'm pulling this up, it's adding some definition to the sky. It's brightening things a little bit. It's just making everything look a little bit better. I can also use the sky enhancer here, and that's just going to make that sky really pop. And so these are two AI tools that you can leverage if they work well for your image and you want to use them. If you have things that you want to get rid of, maybe dust spots, maybe distractions, there is an erase tool. If you're photographing something that's like old and rusty and really cool, I love Structure AI. It's not so great for a landscape like this, but it is a really cool tool that I use quite a bit. Now I'm going to go ahead and jump down here to our landscape tool. And this one has a couple of really cool options. So if you need it, there's dehaze. That's going to bring up some of those dark contrasty areas. So we can use a little dehaze. Golden hour is one of my favorites. Now I'm going to pull this up really high. You can see the effect. Obviously that's way too much, but you can see it's starting to make those golden hour colors really, really pop. So I'm going to go ahead and back that off, just add just a tiny bit here. And then we have our foliage enhancer. If you're photographing green trees or fall colors, this is a really cool tool because it really makes those colors pop. And the cool thing here is you can bring this up and then you can adjust the color that it's targeting. In this image, there's not a whole lot of green to really target. I'm going to turn that off. So another tool that I really like to use on my landscape photos, especially ones that have really rich colors, like a sunset or fall colors, things like that. I really love Mystical. And again, this is just an effect. So this is where you get to be creative and add your own touch to your photos. And I'm going to go ahead and bring that up, and you'll see how that seems to kind of soften things. But if you zoom in, your details are still sharp. It gives kind of the illusion of softness without actually softening. Now, I feel like that softness is a bit too much for this image. So I'll grab that smoothness and drag that back to about there. And to me, that's a really good balance. And with the warmth here, a lot of times I'm going to add a little bit of extra warmth. Basically, it just creates that soft glow with some warmth. Now, I did take this up a little too far. The way I like to edit is I'll pull my sliders up really high so I can see what I'm doing, see what effect it's having, make a few changes, and then back off that overall amount. So maybe to right about there, I think is good. So just to see where we've come so far, there's our before and there's our after. So there's a lot of things you can do to really craft these images in a way that makes sense for you and lets you achieve your artistic vision. And there's far more here than you're gonna have inside of Mylio. So this is a lot of fun. Let's go ahead and do one more thing here. I wanna add a vignette. And what a vignette does is it helps you guide your viewer's eye to the subject in a photo. It darkens down the edges and brings the eye to where you want it to go. So I'm gonna go ahead and start by bringing that amount slider all the way down. We're not gonna leave it there, I promise. And then I'm gonna also bring that size down. And what I'm trying to do is get it about the size of these trees. That's my subject. I'm also gonna change the roundness here. We're gonna maybe go a little bit more round, bring that size down a bit more. I like to bring the feather up really high so it's a nice soft transition. And then click on choose subject. And we're gonna go ahead and move that down so our trees are right there in the center. You can also add a little bit of inner light if you want to add a little bit of pop to the center. And then I go back up here to the amount and I pull that back up. Usually somewhere between 40 and 60 is the sweet spot. And you just have to kind of pick and choose where you want that to be. So for this particular image, I think right about there looks good. There's a lot more I could do to this photo, but I want to make sure we touch on a few different types of images and what you can do, and also how to get these images back into Mylio. So with that, let me go ahead and take a look here at what we have in the chat. All right, and see what we have here as far as questions. All right, Lynn says, how do I add Luminar? I have Photoshop listed. So Lynn, if you're on Mac, you're gonna go, let me just pop back over here to Mylio. Go here to Photo and Open With, go down to Other, and you'll go to your Applications folder and select it. If you're on Windows, there's a couple of extra steps. I think Lori might have posted that link. It's in the manual, so if you go to manual.mylio.com, look at the section for working with an external editor, and it'll have you walk through the steps there. And Lisa's asking, will I show this using a JPEG file? Yeah, we can certainly work on a JPEG. Lisa says, would Luminar be able to bring out a face that's in a shadow that's next to a person who isn't so much in the shadow? It really depends on the image, but yes, it's going to have the ability to do quite a bit of that kind of stuff. All right, so let's go ahead and jump back over here to Luminar and bring this back into Mylio. So now that we've used the Open With, we want to save these edits back to Mylio. So we have a few different options. Now, one of the things I wish Luminar Neo did was automatically put things back into the same folder. Unfortunately, it does not have that option in the Save dialog. So anytime you're using an external editor, you're going to use the File Export option. So let's jump back over here to Neo, and I can either click this Export button up here, or I can go to File and choose Export. And it's going to default to the last location you save something to. In my case, that was the Mylio inbox. That is the easiest way for me to get my stuff back into Mylio from Luminar. But there are a couple of different options here. So you have the Mylio inbox, of course. You can also look for the original folder. One way to do this and make your life a little bit easier is to add a shortcut in the operating system. So actually, let me show you how to do that really quick right now. Let's jump back over here to Luminar, and I'm gonna grab my Finder window, and I'm gonna go to my home folder. There's my Mylio folder right here. So you're gonna go into your root folder, and that's in your user. Find the Mylio folder, and if you have a specific folder that is your main archive of stuff, so for many of you, that's gonna be your Mylio pictures. For me, that folder is just called Photos. What you can do is add that as a shortcut or add it to your favorites in the OS here. It's really easy on Mac. I think it's similarly simple on Windows. On Mac, you're just gonna grab that folder and drag it over here as a shortcut. So there's my Photos folder. And because I save my things with the date and the file name, I have my date right here, so I can easily locate that specific folder. So you can either go straight to the Mylio inbox, or if you want to save that step, I'm going to go here to Photos, and I can find my 2024 folder. And I know this is October 10, so I can go ahead and scroll down. So it's going to be up here to the top. There's my 1010, and that's going to put it back into the same folder. So that is an option. Now, the second option that you're going to want to think about is, do you want to have this saved next to the original, or do you want it to automatically stack with the original in Mylio? If you want to just put it next to it, the easiest way is going to be by far to use the Mylio inbox and move it later. But if you want to create a display image that tells Mylio to automatically stack with the original, that's where you have to find the specific folder where it was saved. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to go here and back here into Luminar. And what you would do is just add underscore. There we go, underscore. Why is my keyboard not working? There we go, underscore display. And that's going to tell Mylio, so it's in the same folder where it came from, that tells Mylio to stack it with the original. You have a lot of other options here. I typically, since I already added sharpening, I'm going to keep that at none. I am going to keep my original size. I don't want to make it any smaller. Adobe RGB is a great color space. For me, I typically choose to save my files as TIFFs because that's a really good archival format for a file. JPEG is also okay, but there are trade-offs. I choose a TIFF. I will typically make my resolution 300 pixels per inch. I don't add any compression. I save it as a 16-bit file, and then I can go ahead and click Save. So that's going to go ahead and export my edits here as a TIFF and stack them with the original in Mylio. So let's jump back over here to Mylio. There's my edit. And you can see over here under the file name, the CR3 is my original unedited raw file, and there's that TIFF that we just created. The way that that looks in the file system, if I go ahead and right click on this and say Reveal in Finder, there's that underscore display that I just created, and there's my original raw file. So they're still both there in your file system. Mylio just automatically stacks them because I added that underscore display. You don't have to do that. If you don't add that, you just want to make sure it's a different file type, or maybe even just add -edit or something like that to the file name, and then it will sit next to your original image. All right. So let's go ahead and take a look here at our other questions. Perfect. Let's see here. Patty and Peter says, should I ask Santa to bring a MacBook for Christmas and ditch my Microsoft OS? You know what? That is completely up to you. Luminar Neo works on Windows and Mac. I prefer Mac, but you know, everybody has their preferences and there's trade-offs for both. You can accomplish pretty much everything on either system these days. It's just a matter of how you like to work. And even the prices of the machines, you can get entry-level Macs for the same, same or similar prices, maybe a little more expensive than entry-level Windows machines. But if you go high-end on either side, they're both quite pricey. So it just depends on how you like to work. All right, so we've got this image back here in Mylio. I did get a request to work with a JPEG. So I'm gonna go ahead and jump over here to my all photos, and I'm gonna find a JPEG to work with by request. So I'm gonna go here to my quick filters, and I'm gonna go here by file extension, and let's find a JPEG. There we go. Here's a couple of options. So here we go. Let's grab, what do we want to edit? Let me see here. Figure out what I want to do here. Let's grab one of these. This one, oh, that one's a raw file as well. A lot of my JPEGs are stacked. Let me go here to something older. That's probably going to be the best place for me to find an actual JPEG. All right. Here we go. This is, where was this from? Okay, this was in Palermo. So this is an old JPEG from an old camera. Let's go ahead and edit this. So I'm gonna again go here to Photo, Open With. If you recently opened Neo, it's gonna show up here as a shortcut as well, so I can click that. Same thing. This is gonna ask if I wanna edit the original or if I've made Mylio adjustments. I'm gonna go ahead and stick with that original, and that's gonna go ahead and bring it in. So from here we can go into Edit, and all of those same tools are available. I can go ahead and pull up that Accent AI. Look how it's just brightening up those shadows. Again, if you had somebody whose face was in the shadows and someone who was not, this Accent AI is going to do an amazing job. Also, by going into Develop and working with your highlights and shadows here, or even in Mylio, those can work really well in those situations too. For this particular image, let's see. Let's go ahead and auto defringe this, and let's go ahead and try to upright this a little bit. That's a little too much. I'm not fond of that correction. I'm just going to kind of leave it tilted like it is. And then we can also work with our color a little bit. To me, this looks a little bit green. So here's my tint slider. I can just very slightly pop this to the right, and I feel like that corrects the green color a little bit. So that's a much more natural looking image. I can even warm it up a little bit if I want. Nope, never mind. All right, so from there, I told you about Structure AI for popping those details. Let's go ahead and pull that up a little bit, and you'll see how that's just making all of these really cool details stand out. So we can do that. And that's pretty much it. Again, we can go then to our file and export. And oh, Lynn's asking if we can try a preset. Let's go ahead and try a preset. So let's go back here to our presets and take a look here. Let's go into this scenery category. Fast fix. This was always one of my favorites here. So I'm going to go here to fast fix. And that just goes ahead and pops it. So if you take a look here at the before and the after. And the cool thing here about presets is you can go in and make further adjustments. So I can add that. This brought back that kind of green color cast. And go back over here to edit, into my develop, my color, and then I can just ever so slightly move that to the right. And that looks so, so much better. So there we go. All right, let's go ahead and take this back to Mylio. We're going to go back here to export. And now you'll see it's still here in this particular category, the one same folder that I saved to before. In this case, I'm just going to pop this into the Mylio inbox. That's a temporary holding area, and then I will go into Mylio and reorganize this later. I'm going to save this as a TIFF. I'm going to increase that resolution to 300, and we'll go ahead and say save. And there we go. We'll go back here to Mylio. And to find that picture, because we're filtered here by JPEGs, I can go ahead and turn that off, go back to my grid, and there we go. There's that TIFF right here in the file system. So when you're looking at things by date, it's going to show up where it needs to show up. If I want to find it in the folder, I can either go here and say show in folder, or go here to my folders view, and it is now in my Mylio inbox, and I can then reorganize it wherever it needs to go. All right, and Darren says I sometimes cheat and use a preset to start with. You know, I think that's not cheating and a great way to go. Presets, you know, you can have it be like you can click a preset and be done, or presets make excellent starting points. So especially if there are like 4 or 5 different adjustments that you make on every single image, you can create your own custom preset and apply that, and it just speeds up your workflow, make things so, so simple. Harold says, my printer has a choice of 600 or 1200 pixels. What would you save the export as? Well, I would choose at least 600 at that point. 1200 is probably going to give you the best quality, but I would do a couple of tests, print things out and see how they print. Just keep in mind that if you do the 1200 pixel, it's going to be a much bigger file size. So it's going to take up more storage space. All right. So let's go ahead and jump back over here to the presentation, make sure I covered all of the things here that I wanted to cover. And I know this is just kind of a, you know, getting you with the fire hose of information of Luminar Neo. There's a ton here and so much cool stuff that you can do. I'm taking a look here at our list and seeing if we had a special guest we were hoping was going to come. I don't see him here. Edward, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, a couple of things. First of all, I did the update in Luminar. It worked perfectly.
Excellent.
Someone mentioned different shades of one person, same picture, one person in the dark, one person in the light. The portrait tools in Luminar are just incredibly great.
Yeah, they're
will solve
phenomenal.
so many problems. It's really, really great.
All right. Did you have any other questions, Edward?
Yes.
Go for it.
Okay. Would you hang on? Let me get the survey out of the way here. Okay. The image that you selected, could you go back and show me where it was located? Yeah, that
So
in
this
my,
one,
yeah.
so this, I mean, the edited version here got put in my Mylio inbox. My original here was this guy.
Okay.
I think was the 2282. Yep. Go ahead.
Where is it?
So if I right click on this, actually better way to.
Is that an Apple Photos?
No, this was,
Where is it?
let me go ahead and double click on that. This was taken with my Canon Digital Rebel. If I go ahead and click on the folder here,
Yeah.
and then I can go back here, my folder structure. This is in my 2006 folder.
Okay. Where is that down on the tree? I don't know what that, or
Yeah.
above the funnel down there.
Yep, let me go ahead and close the funnel there.
That's what's right.
So in my main photos folder, since I have things by year, there's my 2006. And if I go down here to December, there is the Monreale Palermo.
Okay, so that's a linked folder.
It's a linked folder. Well, it was originally a linked folder, but now it just resides on my vaults. Because the original place that I linked it from, that drive is no longer, it went kaput. So because everything was on my vaults, I didn't move it. It's still just, it's in my Mylio folder. And again, that's the same folder structure that I linked over here, or rather I added the shortcut for.
Not copied.
Correct. Yeah, I originally linked it. I did not copy.
Okay. All right. Now I understand how it can work back that way. Okay.
And there was a question here about being able to edit something again later. So that is a great question. One of the things that Luminar does is it does have its own catalog. I can go back here to the catalog, and the pictures that I bring in from Mylio come in as single image edits. And I can go back in here and go back to this picture, make additional changes, and then save another version back to Mylio if I need to. The one thing you might encounter is this is working from the version that is local on my machine. So when I send an original from Mylio to Luminar, if Mylio does not have that original quality file on my computer, it will temporarily pull it in from my vault or one of my other devices so I can work with it. Now, later on, it might free up the space and move that original file back over to one of my vaults, and it might not be present. If I were to go into Mylio, or rather into Luminar, and I see that this looks all pixelated, what you need to do is find that image back in Mylio. And let's go ahead and let's go back and find that one. That was in 2024. And it was one of these down here. I think it was that one. Yeah, that was the one. So what I would do is go back to that picture and right click on it. And down here at the bottom, if you don't have the original locally, you'll say download original. That's going to bring the original back to your computer. And then when you return to Luminar Neo, you'll have the original quality file to work with again. All of your changes are still here. Now, if you go into Luminar and you were to say, remove this from single image edits, you would not be able to go back and edit it. So if you want to have that option to go back and re-edit, it just stays here in your catalog in Luminar Neo. So that is how I do that. Typically though, what I do when I re-edit something, it's because there's a new tool or something available. And I usually end up completely reimagining my edits anyway. I very rarely go back and edit an edited file. If I want to re-edit, I typically just start over. But that's personal preference. All right. Lisa says, what's the difference between a library and a catalog? They're pretty much interchangeable terms. So when you say a library, within the context of Mylio, when I'm looking at everything here, and say, let's say I'm in all photos view, this is my library. It's all of my pictures. It's my archive. So my library is my archive. Catalog often means the database file that's behind it. So the database that Mylio uses to reference where all your pictures stay, where all of your metadata is, that database is often referred to as the catalog. And Luminar has its own catalog. So the pictures you see, I kind of think of that as the library. They're referring to it as a catalog here. They're very often interchangeable. There's maybe slight nuance differences, but for most practical purposes, there's not a big difference. Ben is asking, do I ever save different versions of the same photo? If so, what is the method of updating the name? I would usually just do like -1, -2, -3, or if it's something descriptive, I could do -black and white, -sepia, something like that. That's what I would do as far as renaming them. All right. Lisa says, I'm not sure when I use this, but when I make the same edits, can I make the same edits to a group of photos? Absolutely. So let's say I have a bunch of images that are all very similar. I want to take those edits and sync them across a bunch of images once you're in Neo. I can actually just right click on this, go to adjustments, copy adjustments, go over to my next picture and right click adjustments. If I had actually copied, it would say paste, and I could paste those adjustments. You could also select multiple images and go to adjustments and sync adjustments. So yes, you can make adjustments to one, synchronize those across a whole bunch of images, export them back to Mylio, and be done very, very quickly. All right, Harold says, when you move the edited file from Mylio inbox to your photos folder, can you open it again with Neo? Yeah, absolutely. So that edited file is just a version of your picture with those changes baked in. If I were to reopen that same TIFF file that I created, that's going to just bring me up a flat TIFF. It's not going to be re-editable in the same way that if I reopen the RAW in Neo and used this cataloged version. So yes, you can open it, but it's going to be a flat version of your original. All right, Norm says Luminar has Luminar Share app that runs on Android, maybe iPhones, but you must have Luminar running and the PC to use it on, let's see here. Most of the edits, particularly the AI aspects of presets, you get to see the results. I've used it occasionally and it works fine. Excellent. I've used the Luminar Share app a little bit, but because I have Mylio that gets all of my pictures on all of my devices, using Luminar Share hasn't really been something that's been necessary, but it is available to you and you're welcome to use it. All right. And he also says there's a mobile version that'll do some of the more popular presets locally on the phone. Yeah, absolutely. The Luminar app for the iPhone is a lot of fun. It does have some great presets built into it. It has some of those basic tools like that Adjust AI. The ones that you probably would use the most are available on the phone or the iPad, but it just doesn't have the entire list of stuff. All right. Let me go ahead and edit one more picture. There's one more thing that I wanted to show. And let's see here. Ray says, is there an XMP sidecar with the edited photo? So you're going to keep your XMP that Mylio creates. Unfortunately, Luminar does not save those edits to XMP, nor does it save any metadata. So if you go into their catalog and let's say you add some information in their catalog, it is only in that database that information exists. It does not save it to that industry standard XMP file like Mylio does. All right. Darren says, I found in the early versions of Luminar, it would create huge behind the scenes database of incremental history and changes. So find a good place in your system to locate the Luminar catalog. You are absolutely correct. That file can get big. That's a lot of times why I don't keep those single image edits unless it's something that I know I'm going to come back and work on. So that is something to keep in mind. Absolutely. All right, let's go ahead and find one more image to work on because I mentioned that this is also a good tool if you're working on family history projects. So if you're restoring photos and maybe you don't want to spring for the full version of Photoshop or even Photoshop Elements, this can be a really great alternative. So let me go ahead and go into some of my old pictures here. And I'm going to grab this one here of my great-grandfather. I never met him, but let's go ahead and edit this one. And the reason I'm picking this is because it's actually a pretty small file. It's only 1331 by 1919. I did scan it at 600 DPI, so it's a pretty big file and a TIFF. So it's good quality, but it's still pretty small. So I'm going to go up here to Photo and choose Open with Luminar Neo and say Edit Original. That's perfect, and continue. And here's this picture. Now, a couple of the things that I'd like to fix on this, it has a little bit of a magenta color cast to it. It's got this mark here on the side and some discoloration over here. So we can fix this really, really easily. I also would like to upscale this to make it a bigger file. So in case I want to print it, maybe make a photo book or something, I have a bigger version to work with. So I'm going to go ahead and jump over to my edit. And let's first crop this. I want to get rid of the border. I'm just going to straighten this out. And I'm going to go ahead and choose the free crop and then just pull in to get rid of these sides. Get rid of that border. And there we go. Straighten that out. It's a little bit different cut there, and I don't want to lose too much of his hand. And pull that in a little bit there. Hit return on my keyboard. All right, so first change made. Now let's go ahead and adjust the color. I'm going to go to the color tool, and there's this great remove color cast slider. So I'm just going to move that to the right, and that makes that already look a ton better. I can also go up here to my Enhance AI, and that's going to just brighten that up, pop some of those details, gives it a little bit more contrast. All of a sudden, that's looking a lot better, just that. So there's our before, and there's our after. I might actually bring back that color a little bit. Maybe I took it a little too far. There we go. Just pull that back a little bit. All right. So from there, I want to go ahead and I want to get rid of a couple of these distractions. Again, this is something you can't do in Mylio. Mylio's got great color correction tools, but if you actually need to change pixels, that's where you need to get into something else. So I'm going to go to Erase, and I'm going to grab my Erase tool and just paint over that little line there. And go ahead and click Erase, and that's gone. And then you can use the bracket keys on your keyboard to make a bigger circle over here. And I'm going to just kind of paint in over this side here where there's that yellow mess, and click Erase. And that kind of gave it a little bit of artifacts. I'm going to go in here and clean up a couple of those. Make that look a little bit smoother and like it's meant to be there. And sometimes you have to go over these a couple of times and it cleans it up. But I think that's much, much better. So there's our before and our after. And I mentioned I want to make this bigger. So now that I have made those edits, I can go back here to the catalog, and there is this resolution enhancement here and an upscale. So I'm going to go ahead and open that up, drag my photo over there. And there's a few options here, so I can go ahead and open this up. There are two different types here. I'm going to stick with universal. If the face is really obscured, very, very blurry, you may want to use Face Enhancer. Now, I tested this image earlier. Face Enhancer almost made this look a little too artificial, so I'm going to leave that off and just stick with the regular settings. We're going to go ahead and just do a 2x and upscale, and it's actually pretty quick. And then that's going to pop that into the upscale folder over here. And I now have a picture that is twice as big as the other. So if I look up here, it's now 2400 by 3476. And I can go ahead and zoom in on that. And that's much bigger, better quality than what I had before. Now I can also take this and I can do a little bit more sharpening. I can do a little bit more editing. But this is a really great way to get some of that additional tools and creativity that you might not have with just Mylio. So it expands your tool set hugely. All right. So Lynn asked, can you put the edits on another external drive? I believe you can. I think that's going to be something that you'll find in the Luminar manual, how to move their catalog file. But usually when you first start it up, it's going to ask you where you want to store it. And I believe you can store it on an external drive. All right. Are there any other questions? Let me pop back over here to Keynote. If you guys are interested in checking out Luminar Neo, you can go to this link or you can use my QR code here on the right, and that'll go ahead and get you to their Black Friday page. They've got some great sales going on right now. And if you enter my code here, Andrew, at checkout, there's a little place you click on enter coupon code. That gets you another $10 off your purchase. So if you're interested in checking it out, I would appreciate if you use that link. You can always go direct to their website as well. So that's there if you would like to make use of it. Are there any other questions today? Let's see here. Margie asked, can you change the color, i.e. sepia? Absolutely. I believe there is even a preset for that. Let's jump back over here to Luminar. Go over here to presets. And let's see, presets. Pretty sure there's a preset in there for that, but we can even just go, probably the easiest way to do that is with a LUT. And that would be under the mood tool here. And there's a sepia right there. Creative, sepia. And then I can pull the rest of the saturation out of that so it's then a straight sepia image. So yep, you can absolutely do that. Any other questions today? All right. Well, I want to thank you guys all for joining me today. I hope this was fun and informative, gives you a boost of some of the things you can do creatively between Mylio and other editing apps, and particularly Luminar Neo, which I think is just a lot of fun. It's an awesome application. Disclosure, I used to work for them too, and so I'm pretty fond of it. I've got a soft spot for this, but it's an excellent piece of software. Check it out and let me know what you think. I would love to hear your opinion. Lisa, I'm glad you enjoyed the presentation. Darren, you as well. I do want to remind you guys that we are off next week. So if you're doing things next week and you're looking for events, Mylio is not going to be having any live. Well, actually, we'll probably have one webinar. Rich Harrington, I think, is going to do one more. We haven't published it yet. If you're looking for that, that might be available. Lori and I will be off, but we will be back with a ton of stuff for you the first week of December. So thank you again for being here, and we'll see you next time. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Thanks, Angela.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye now.
Bye.